And we welcome you to the best time of year. The kids are back in school, the birds are chirping, and Zach McGibbon's actually working for a living. Welcome to This Is Wrestling. Lee Versage along with Zach friggin' McGibbon. There'll be a couple of more stop signs that have to be put up, a couple more cars on the road. I think it'll go to 6 in Belleville, and things are really starting to heat up now that the clock has turned into the month of September. Zach, how are you?
Doing pretty good, Lee. It's kind of a throwback right now for me because as we're recording, I just did a morning shift at that very same station you were mentioning. Kind of throwing it back to the time when we would record at CFRA, and I would do the morning shift, and we would start at 12 o'clock, and I'd be done my lengthier shift, and you'd be just getting started. Very different times of day for both of us, so it's a bit of a throwback there, but a lot to talk about on this episode, so looking forward to it.
I can only imagine on Labor Day Monday, the only day that people get to sleep in before their real life starts, how many people were up at 6 a.m. listening to you. That's
I know.
That's quite a coup.
Hey, I'm living up to the Labor Day name today. That's what we were doing.
That's what we're doing. Yeah, I know. And I've actually recorded another podcast, and between laundry and 90-minute grass cut and dishes and cleaning of the house, I've been laborious myself, but nothing as laborious as trying to get through a show with you. No. A show on the WWE Bash at Berlin. We got No Mercy in NXT that just happened. We got a very quick build up back to All Out that's happening coming up, like as we sit here, coming up in about 6 days. So a ton to talk about. But look, we didn't do a full preview of Bash at Berlin, pretty much because, well, I think as this goes along, we'll tell you that we kind of predicted. If I had done the prediction show, we both would have been right on like every count.
Yes.
And then we'll also talk a little bit about Sid Eudy passing away right as we kind of released our episode. We didn't get a chance to talk about Sid Vicious and some of his, be able to give back to wrestling that the way that he did. I think, people had some thoughts on Sid Vicious in some of his stints. I do as well, but we'll get to that. But it was Bash in Berlin, and it's like there's a model now, Zach, for what a PLE in a different country is going to be, and they just sort of stick to the script. Couple of title matches that the titles are never, ever in a million years going to change hands, but we'll try to make them interesting. We'll change the women's tag team titles again to get a hot crowd at one point, a title change, if you can believe it. Not that somebody predicted that like months ago when you said, we'll just use the women's tag belts as like, this is the moment that we'll just get everybody excited. They did it again in Berlin. But look, let's start off right away with the fact that I get it. They do this a lot. Rhea Ripley got the main event in Australia, and Gunther gets the main event in Berlin, Germany. But they open the show with Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens for the, I always forget the Universal Championship.
The undisputed WWE Championship.
Yeah, whatever. Except another guy's got a world championship.
Yeah, very much disputed, yes.
In the company. Cool. But it is Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens. And as we said, no chance. If you thought Kevin Owens was winning the title beforehand, you are an idiot. But what did you think of the story that they told about Owens, doubting himself, getting close, and then at the end, hugging Cody Rhodes? I think there were some people that thought he was going to turn at that point. I'm like, no way. They haven't done enough. And Kevin Owens just kind of gives him a hug and leaves, and clearly he's not feeling good about himself. What do you think of kind of the storyline, and what did you think of the match, Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes?
Yeah, I like the match. I thought it was a good way to open it, and that's something that I've noticed with these PLEs as well. and I believe you kind of touched on it there in terms of, they have the hometown wrestler be in the main event, and Cody's been in the opener in a lot of these, kind of being the guy to lead things off and start things off hot. And that kind of continued here with big pops for both Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. I was liking the match, and I did like the match, but that spot, as soon as it happened in the match, you knew I wasn't gonna like it. Like, I don't understand what this thought process is in wrestling right now, where wrestlers don't want to hit the moves that they have been trained to do all their lives. And because of this friendship, I guess, that Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes have had for a year, that Kevin Owens is, conflicted on having to deliver this apron powerbomb, a move that he's had no issue with his longtime best friend in Sami Zayn, whether he was a babyface or a heel or any other wrestler. But with Cody, I don't know. Oh, I'm so conflicted. Oh, I can't believe I have to do this move in the professional wrestling match to win. I don't understand this thought process. It's happening in AEW too. How about you just hit the move and win, and then you could deal with that storyline stuff in your promos and whatnot afterwards, instead of in the match itself. But other than that spot, which annoyed me to no end, I liked the match. I thought it was good. And they continued the build here for Owens and him eventually going to turn heel. So there was stuff I liked about it. What I could live without another wrestler having to be conflicted about hitting his finishing move. But if you take that part away, I do like this story that they're telling here. I like this idea that I'm not saying that there's ways that they could tell this story that isn't good, because I think the way that they're telling this is pretty good right now. And it's just that the way that we could get there, I think, could be a little bit better. But still, I liked it. It was a good opener.
So what do you think, though? Do you think Kevin Owens turns and then we get more of Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens here down the stretch? Are they going back to solo? What do you think is next here for Cody?
Based on the reaction I saw from other people, they seem to be ready to go back to Cody and solo. I feel like they're going to go back to Cody and Kevin again. I know it was a little bit more definitive on the finish, but with WWE, they'll be able to, well, I shouldn't say they'll be able to, they will explain away able is a strong word. They'll explain it away, just be saying, oh, but I didn't hit this move, and if I did it, I would have had you beat, so we're gonna have this match again in the future, blah blah blah. So I see them having another match. I don't think this is over. I just don't think it would make that much sense if they would do a Cody versus Solo Sikoa match, and then Kevin Owens, who's had this feud with the Bloodline for years, would help them win in something. Just it wouldn't make that much sense to me. So I think they're going to do this match again. And based on what we saw there could be more that they could build upon. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I think they'll, bring it back for another match.
Now, the next PLE, correct me if I'm wrong, is the Bad Blood in Atlanta.
Yes.
For Cody, a homecoming of sorts. Okay, I'll ask you another question here in a minute, but we'll get back to that. Like, what would be, like, right now there's no bad blood between Cody and Kevin Owens, so that would have to happen soon to sort of get up to the pay-per-view, which is happening in early October.
Yep.
So I mean, you can't have a match again with two friends that are still friends at Bad Blood. So if they're going to do that, it's going to have to be soon. We'll see if they're able to pull the trigger. Well, after that, we got the Unholy Union losing their tag belts to Jade and Bianca. I don't even know. I have no analysis of this. I don't know what they're doing with Jade and Bianca until they split them up and like we actually see that Jade can go. I haven't seen that yet, and I feel like they're stalling, and then using these women's tag titles as like get some excitement, get some heat moment in a building that's already ready to erupt. Let's give them something to erupt about. So we'll change the women's tag belts again. Like, oh my God, I just don't. I didn't get anything from this.
Yeah, this kind of met my expectations of what the match would be. The big thing for me was, would Jade Cargill, they really like putting her in hot tag spots, and sometimes she does very well with them, and then other times the match will completely break down when she's in the hot tag spot. And in this case, it didn't break down. Are my standards low that I should applaud that a hot tag spot didn't break down? Potentially, maybe. But, this match kind of met my expectations. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't bad. It was just a kind of a match on the card. And like you said, this was just kind of an excuse to say, hey, a title changed hands on this show. Thank you to all the fans here in Berlin, Germany that spent hundreds of dollars to get into the PLE to reward you for spending money on us. Here's your title change for the Women's Tag Team Championship. This was just a match on the card for me as well. Not much else I can really add.
We do have new Women's Tag Team champions. All right, let's get to CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. Strap match. I'm not a big fan of strap matches. I think that there's some cool violence that you can use. I think that's good. I don't like the idea of it ends up being the same all the time to me. Are we going to get a spot where some guys touching all of the corners and some guys following behind, unbeknownst to the guy who's touching the corners, also touching it? Are we going to get one of those spots? Oh, right. Of course we are. It's in every strap match ever. But I'll give them a little bit of credit where they didn't end that way. And this was sort of a decisive victory for CM Punk at the end of the day. He needed one. And, when you thought he was going to win last month and we're all like, Zach, he's not winning. You said, no, he's going to win. No, he's not. He needs to win. Well, now after losing to Drew McIntyre at SummerSlam, he did need to win. Hasn't won a match in WWE in 10 years, and he finally wins this one. I actually like this match quite a bit. And this for me is like, okay, they've built this story right. They got two guys that at least look like they don't like each other, and they've each had, pretty big wins against each other now. So I didn't mind this.
Yeah, I liked it too. I wish this was the match we got at SummerSlam. I can definitely tell you that. They didn't, bash you over the head with the what's it called? Bracelet stuff, the friendship bracelet stuff. They just kind of saved that for the finish, and even then I didn't bother me in the finish. It didn't like Punk didn't stop say, hey, wait a minute, what are you doing with my bracelet? Sure, I'm about to win my match here in a moment, but I've got other things I got to deal with here with this bracelet. It wasn't anything like that. It was part of the finish, and it made sense. And I like the work. I just think the stipulation kind of worked against them a little bit because it was dumb to see them go and hit the corners. And especially now when we've seen other strap matches from AEW and how that they've presented that stipulation, the bar has now exceeded for what people expect in a strap match. So that was kind of going against them. But for what we got here, I like the work. I thought they worked the gimmick to the best they could. I wish this was the match we got at SummerSlam instead of the special guest referee spot with Seth. I enjoyed it for what it was, and Punk needed the win, and he's saying that he wants to go after the championship. He thinks that Drew McIntyre will have a say in that and prevent him from doing that. But this was good. I liked it. It wasn't amazing, but I liked it.
Yeah, and I would completely agree. I think Drew McIntyre's got a big win over CM Punk. Now Punk's got to win, and Punk wants to go after the gold. I think we're not done here with Drew McIntyre and CM Punk, and I think that that's okay. So yeah, I mean, very predictable, but I think you had to take out that part of it when you watched it and go, okay, can you appreciate it? And I thought the work was pretty good. And for me, again, I told you this before, I need to see Punk here in a bunch of matches like this. I need to see him in the SummerSlam match and this strap match and some big time matches against some big time people and continue to perform. I don't think it was off the charts good, but for him and his baseline of where he needs to be, for me, he needs to put a few of these together. And this is another one that he can add to it. So I don't really look at it as more or less than adding to, okay, I'm going to get myself back up here into a top caliber guy. If anybody thought that Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio were going to beat Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, again, the prediction show would have been very, very, very easy because there wouldn't have just been, I think these people are going to win. Yep. I think this person's going to, yep. They really didn't do anything in this PLE to kind of change your mind. But Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley do emphatically beat Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan. Didn't love it. Maybe because I knew what it was going to be from the beginning until the end. And then it was exactly that. But the only thing I did like is that every time we get in these spots, a little bit more, Zach, you're going to be leaning towards that Dominic Mysterio is going to be put in more prime situations as this goes along. I'm just telling you that it's going to happen.
Oh, I don't deny that. They've got him in the Intercontinental Championship tournament there too, so he'll probably be a prominent feature in that. I actually like this more than I thought I would. I thought all four really showed out and put their working boots on. I thought I liked this match. And I'm surprised in saying that because I'm not exactly the biggest dirty Dominic Mysterio fan or Liv Morgan fan on this planet. So, but I thought they worked to what they were able to do. There's still that element when I watch Dominic Mysterio where they protect him in spots where they don't have him out in the ring that long. And they like to do stuff to the outside and they smoke and mirrors him a little bit. But considering what they were building with these two teams and what we got here with a couple of the run-ins and whatnot, like I was surprised. The run-ins didn't really bother me. It made sense. I enjoyed it for what it was. I liked it much better. I thought this would be other than the women's tag match, one of the low points on the card, but they had their working boots on and the crowd was into it, and I liked it better than I thought I would, so I gotta give them props for that.
All right, I was expecting the crowd to be hot, and they were. I found this one odd because I know that I didn't know how the crowd was going to react because I knew that they were going to react for Gunther, but I didn't know if it was going to be all Gunther and they were going to go against Randy Orton. Love the fact that Ludwig Kaiser, who's been a part of Gunther Walter's life for a long, long time, was a big part of this. I think even though you didn't ever think there was going to be a title change, I thought they presented this in a really good way. I thought Gunther looked amazing. I thought, Ludwig being out there and being such a big part of his history. I thought Gunther can make people look good. Randy looked okay. And the crowd was a little bit behind Randy as well. Randy kind of gives him his flowers at the end as Gunther does beat Randy Orton to keep the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. So there was no drama from it, but it was cool to kind of watch guys that you appreciate that have worked hard for a long time get a moment. And I understand that's what happened with Rhea in Australia, and good for her. I just don't think Nia Jax being in a main event did anything for me. But people getting moments, Damian Priest and Bad Bunny in Puerto Rico, I understand it. I think it's a good idea. And man, was this crowd hot and loving their champion.
Yeah, the reaction that Gunther got in Germany was really cool to see. And the crowd itself was hot. You could tell from the start of the match, too, that they were very much into this. Yeah, but as the match went on, this was very clearly a Randy Orton match. Lawn, plotting, working holds,
yeah, it's a main
targeting,
event.
and
It's a main event. He
I
doesn't have
know.
the ability to do 30 minutes like bell to bell in a main event anymore. So I don't know what you expected it to be.
It was 34 minutes long. It's just
That's what main events are, though.
but we're also talking about Randy Orton, and I know I've seen some main events that have gone 30 minutes that are long, that are better.
He went longer with Edge. That was amazing.
Yeah. Well, let's not get carried away.
Oh, that was so bad.
I still laugh at the screenshot of the tweets from that match at WrestleMania, and it was Meltzer saying, I want to confess to crimes I didn't commit, and Alvarez saying this is such a bad match, and then Ryan Satin saying this was excellent, I love this, the story that they're it's still one of my favorite screenshots of tweets I've ever seen.
And the fact that was it Edge? Somebody hurt themselves quite badly in that match, did they not?
Yeah, I thought it was Edge. I thought Edge hurt himself.
Edge,
yeah, that was
which is just a complete colossal screw up when not only is it such a terrible match, but then somebody hurts themselves.
Yeah, in the process. I mean, I think we were all in pain watching that match too, but I didn't love this main event. I can't get into Orton at this stage of his career. I really can't. I'm trying. I'm really trying. I wanna get invested in all. He's a big match wrestler. He knows how to work, and he can.
No, he doesn't. No, he does. It's past his prime, and he's done.
Yes,
and that's like, I don't know why. Like, I'm not worked up about it. Randy Orton's a mid-card guy that people still come and pay to see.
Yep.
So use him, fine. But putting him in main events and expecting, like, I had like zero expectation. Zero.
I was hoping that maybe, just maybe, that he would wrestle to Gunther's style a little bit more. Just to show that he can adapt. But he didn't do that. So, with that said, I think Randy Orton's entrance is still going on as we're talking. They looped that song like 7 different times. I was like, I get it. He hears voices in his head, and the crowd loves singing along. I get it. Let's get to the Gunther entrance here. This is Gunther's moment here, not Orton's. But
no, I think with 5 matches on the card and the highest grossing event that they've had.
Yes, ever.
Overseas.
Yep.
Is that right?
I think ever, like any sort of grossing event ever when it comes to arena shows, I should say.
Yeah, I was going to say not the WrestleMania
not
shows,
with WrestleManias, but
the arena shows. So yeah, I mean, that's you got to give him something. And if you're only having 5 matches and it's not going to be the work rate in the match, I just have so low expectations for these type of things that, like, you got to give the crowd what they've paid for, and they're not going to get a 30-minute classic from Randy Orton. So
yeah. We certainly didn't get it here. I didn't think.
No.
I'm surprised. A lot of people are higher on this match than I thought they would be. Just from reviews I've seen. I don't know. I thought this was just another Orton match with just went long, and he's very slow, and I just I wish they could have given Gunther a little bit more. Like he did get a couple of those chops in, but I wanted to see more of that Gunther that we know that he could be, but that wasn't going to happen with Orton.
So they get through the Randy Orton stuff, but I think with these PLEs in the different countries, they're sort of catering to the crowd, and you're not going to get kind of what you want. But I do think as we're on the way here down to Bad Blood and Survivor Series, I do think with Gunther as champion, you're going to get more of that, and whether that's Drew McIntyre or CM Punk or maybe somebody else, maybe Seth Rollins. I think you're going to get a little more of what you're asking for here coming up soon.
Yep.
Where do you think they're going with Gunther next? Do you think it's going to be Punk? Do you think it's going to be maybe Seth Rollins if Punk and McIntyre are still tied up with each other. Where do you think that that's headed?
Yeah, that's interesting. With the way it seems like they're leaning towards the Gunther CM Punk path, which would be fascinating to see. Especially to see if Punk's triceps can stand up to a Gunther chop. But yeah, I think that's where they'll lead to start off, and kind of tease that, and then you could even do the match if you wanted to. I'm sure, Punk challenging for the championship against Gunther, and you give Gunther a high price, a big victory over CM Punk on the PLE. I think that could work. I think that could work very well, actually. So I would go Gunther Punk. Like, Gunther Seth Rollins would be a good match. I think Rollins would put on his working boots for that, and Gunther's Gunther. He's the best in-ring worker in that company. But in terms of creating more intrigue, and if you really want to make Gunther a guy, I think having him face off against Punk and have him be the first opponent after the McIntyre stuff, at least until they go back to the McIntyre program, which they will do. I think that would be interesting.
Right. Yeah, I actually think that's exactly where they're going to go, is that like Punk will get the opportunity, and then Drew McIntyre is going to stick his nose in it and go, no. And yeah, you wonder whether, like, I just don't know how Seth Rollins gets involved in some of this. So, but I guess that's to be seen. So what do you make of the pay-per-view? Like, to me, it was good because you had that hot crowd, you had some entertainment, but it was like as predictable as you're ever going to have. It's just, they now have a model for shows that are not, like, if they're in Germany, they're in Australia, they're in France, and they have a model for it, and they're just sticking to it. And I get it. From a business point of view, how do you debate that it's the highest grossing arena show in history?
Yep. Absolutely. I'll tell you this, I like this way more than SummerSlam. So you're not getting a ranty raving review from that. I actually like this show. I was surprised on how much I like the show, actually. With some of the matches kind of coming in, and yeah, it was predictable, but I was kind of going into it saying, at least if it could flow nice enough and the work is good, I think I would enjoy it. And I did. I would give it, like, it's not going to sound like a high mark, but I'm a tough marker, but I was hovering around like a 6.25, 6.5 for this show.
Oh, 6. I love the 2.5s.
Yeah, I'm sticking with it.
It's a McGibbon staple. See, I was going to give it a 6.5.
Yeah.
Like, this is as average a show, because I think you can raise the bar a little bit on kind of the emotion and the involvement from the crowd and all the stuff. But when I pay for events, especially if it's going to be like a bigger event that you're leading up to for weeks of television, I need a tad of unpredictability.
Yep.
I need just a little bit to go, hey, I don't know necessarily what's going to happen here. And I had zero, and I mean zero, of that. So I don't know. I just I was a little bit more down on it, and it's because of it's just what I enjoy from professional wrestling, is a little bit of the unpredictability of it. And I just didn't have any in the show. Yep. And it was like, just go along with it and be okay with it, and just have fun with the journey of getting there. And it's like, okay, I can try, but it's just not my thing. And so, and again, I get it. Like, I do understand why they do it the way that they do it. And Gunther certainly deserved a main event spot. But if that wasn't in Germany, would Gunther still have been the main event?
Oh, no.
And it's right. No. So it's like your most important title is the one that you opened the show with, and you only did that because of the location of the event.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not necessarily how you treat. You treat the importance of titles the same way all the time. Whatever is most important is most important. It's not most important on, 350 days, but for 15 days, it's not most important. Like, I don't like that philosophy. So I totally understand from like people point to the business and the tickets and what, the people of Germany wanted. I get it. But there were more people watching than in Germany. And I don't know, maybe that's just for me, because I know that they made a lot of money, and good for them. And that's the goal. The business is to make a lot of money and keep people involved, and they seem to be doing that. So, okay, I'm still interested. I'm more interested in Raw tonight as we record this than I am the pay-per-view, because now I want to see where they're going, because I knew exactly where they were going on Saturday. All right, well, that's our WWE talk.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, our Bash in Berlin talk. Let's get to the unfortunate passing of Sid Eudy, Sid Vicious, Sid Justice for a little bit. Involved in a lot, Zach, in the world of professional wrestling, because he was so big and so strong. And while not the greatest professional wrestler I've ever seen, he was used at a time where big guys got over, and for the most part, the guy main evented a WrestleMania with Hulk Hogan was there, but it wasn't even for the title. It was the sub story of what happened at the Royal Rumble between Ric Flair and the Macho Man and Elizabeth and all that stuff. So broke his leg famously, which a lot of people will remember him for. But WCW world champion, the guy held a lot of different titles. At one point, skyscrapers with the Undertaker, which was quite a scene. So I mean, a lot of different things. What do you think of when you think of Sid Vicious?
I think of, and this word has been used a lot nowadays, it's kind of lost its meaning, but I think aura when it comes to him. Sid Vicious, for me, when I go back and watch him, I think he rocks, but not in the traditional professional wrestler sense of him being great. Because he was not a great professional wrestler, as you mentioned. And his promos were, famously, some of them were fun to listen to, and then other times they were fun to listen to for the reasons being that it wasn't great. The famous half the brain that you do. I have half the brain that you do promo on WCW, or hey, we're live, pal, as he's saying, no, I gotta restart on the promo. But when I think of Sid Vicious, I think of a guy that despite not being able to be the greatest professional wrestler in the ring, he's got this aura and this charisma that not a lot of wrestlers have today or ever in this business. Sid was a guy that could show up in a promotion, and he just had this crowd connection when he would come out. I think of his entrance at the 1996 Survivor Series against Shawn Michaels for the title, and just how that MSG crowd was so invested in him just coming out. And he was supposed to be the heel in that match. I think of him showing up in ECW when, ECW is known for having the hardcore fan base that they love the in-ring stuff. They love the luchadors that came in. They love the extreme style. But Sid Vicious comes out in ECW, and he still gets big pops in front of the ECW crowd. He's very much a guy that's all aura. You look at him and you're like, wow, this guy's 6'9". He's got long bleach hair, and he's just got this intensity that nobody else has. And I think that's why he's gotten so many opportunities during the 90s to be a main event guy. You mentioned with the WrestleManias, both times he was on WrestleMania, he main evented. The one with Hogan, as you mentioned, where it had that botch finish where Papa Shango didn't run in time, leading to Sid Justice having to kick out of the leg drop, with which rules, I'm not going to lie. And then the other main event against Undertaker, which was on that same show. I believe that it was Austin and Brett, I believe. So every WrestleMania he was on, he main evented, and he was always the guy that was going to get pushed. And even when stuff would happen, you know, famously, he was a guy that would like to take the summers and play softball. That he was known as Softball Sid at points. That was not a gimmick. That was something he loved to do. But he would go into a promotion. He would wrestle for a couple of years there, and then he would move on to a different promotion before people sort of would figure him out fully when it comes to his in-ring stuff. So he was such a interesting wrestler, because again, it's like you think of all the great professional wrestlers in our industry when it comes to Ric Flair, you know, those guys, those great all-around talents where it's like, you know, 10 on charisma, 10 on in-ring, 10 on presence. With Sid, it was more like a, you know, in-ring was like, I'll be generous, I'll say a 4 in-ring. And whatnot. But what Sid had when it came to charisma and presence was like more than 10. It was like 11, 12, because he just had this presence about him. And he obviously had a lot of potential that people wanted to kind of see through with him. And and with Sid, it's like he goes in the ring and he does the power bomb, he does the clothesline, does a lot of the simple big man stuff, but he does it with sort of an intensity that in short bursts. It was kind of awesome for a guy of his size and his caliber. But all that to say, the match I recommend people go back and watch is one of the greatest squash matches I've ever seen in professional wrestling. It's in 1989. It's with the Skyscrapers. This is the version with Sid Vicious and Danny Spivey.
And Danny Spivey, yeah.
And this match is against Lee Scott. And it's on NWA Main Event. It's on 1989. And Sid just goes in there and he just beats the tar out of this jobber from the clothesline. He throws him to the outside, then picks him back up and throws him back into the ring. He does that razor's edge, but he throws the guy and spins him in the air. Like, it's an incredible squash match, and you could just see from that why promoters would be so salivated with a guy like that and how he was able to go in the ring and just destroy jobbers like that. A high recommendation. Plus, you know, seeing a guy named Lee just get tossed around like that in the ring is very satisfying, especially for a lot of listeners, I think.
Well, it absolutely would be, for sure, because it never happened before. So we need to have others that would do that. I think, look, and everything you say is true. And sometimes people just are what they are, right? Like, you can't make them into great wrestlers if they're not a great wrestler. And that's why we love professional wrestling, because the greatest to do it have all of those things. And some people just have some of those things. And that's amazing that you could walk in and have that sort of aura and presence. There's no doubt he did. He was such a big human being, jacked up, this crazy, intense, like he is just going to kill you. But I think when you're trying to dissect, and I think that that's okay, and he made a lot of money for it. But I think sometimes when we look back on the career and it's like, well, that's who he was. If I said to you, what's the best match that Sid Vicious was ever in?
Like just a lengthy 20-minute match? It'd be
doesn't
tough
have to be
think.
a lengthy. Like, I mean, like more than against the jobber where he's kicking the crap out of the guy. Mm-hmm. Like in a big spot. Doesn't have to, like, even if it was short. Like, what's the most memorable kind of big spot that he was in that you're like, this was good.
The first one that came to my mind was that 96 match with Shawn, but it wasn't exactly a barn burner of a match either.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the ones that I would say as well, because Shawn is so good.
Yep.
That it made him look like $1 million. I guess my point is he didn't have very many. And I think sometimes when, and I'm talking about, like, I know the man passed, and we're just sort of talking about his career and the on-screen wrestler part of it, not the human being part of it.
Yep.
When I say this, I didn't have a lot of time because he's a lot of what I don't like about professional wrestling. Now, Did he have an aura? Yes. Did he draw people into that aura? And so everything that you said makes sense to me, and I sort of put up with it. But the fact that him and Hogan were in a main event of WrestleMania with Savage and Flair on the mid card for the title, I was like, what? Like, they're mad because they pulled each other out of a match when Ric Flair had the greatest match in the world in the Royal Rumble? Like, I just never got to the point. It was like, even when he won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, it's like, why? Like, what's he going to do with it? Going to fight Kevin Nash and they're just going to go blah, 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 hit each other, and then somebody's going to win? Like, I liked him better as the bodyguard. I liked him better as the muscle behind somebody else rather than the feature performer in the ring.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not taking away from anything. I'm just talking about my view of what Sid Vicious was. He was not a guy that if he came out in the main event that I would be excited for. It was more of he could add a lot more to other people's matches than he could just getting in there himself.
Yeah.
And then you have the human moment, right? With one of the most kind of, pun intended, vicious leg breaks that you'll ever see.
Yep.
Was gross. And I don't even know if I've watched it more than probably twice, once back when it happened and once since. Mm-hmm. But like, just not something I want to watch.
No. And that kind of halted his career at that point too, because he had worked obviously independence after that, but he never got back to that WWF reign other than the match against Heath Slater when they were doing that Legends run on Raw a couple more than 10 years ago now, which is crazy to think about. So yeah, that's the thing with Psycho Sid is yeah, he had that leg break, and really, other than working indies, that was the end of his time in the main event scene on in a major promotion. So yeah, I get it. Like with Sid, you're not going to get the greatest wrestler, but sometimes with some wrestlers, you got to look at them in different lights. And in the case of Psycho Sid, whenever I watched him, so I'll say this: when I was starting to kind of get into wrestling, there were 3 wrestlers that my dad showed me, and was like, oh, I really enjoyed watching their work. One was Roddy Piper. The other was Ravishing Rick Rude, and the other was Psycho Sid. But even my dad was like, you're not watching Psycho Sid to see him wrestle. You're watching Psycho Sid because this is a guy that, when you describe, and this is kind of a cliche, but when you describe your prototypical pro wrestler, like Psycho Sid would be in that vision of what a prototypical pro wrestler would be. And then you add on to the fact that he had this intensity about him when he would cut promos, when he would come out to the ring and he would have that crowd connection. I think that's what made Sid so unique compared to other big guys, because we've seen plenty of times before you've got the big muscle guys that are like 6'8", 300 pounds, and they walk out and there's nothing to them after that because they can't wrestle and they don't have the charisma. But with Sid, he had the charisma to the max and then some. And I think that's what made him stand out and why he got so many opportunities in his career. And of course, when you mention Sid, you got to mention some of the other stuff behind the scenes. Like, you have to mention the scissors incident with Arn Anderson that let him go from WCW. There was some talk that if that incident didn't happen, they might have put the WCW belt on him and beat Vader. Whether that's true or not is kind of been up for debate, but I know that's kind of been discussed ever since that scissors incident. And of course, WCW being WCW, they referenced that incident in a promo during WCW 2000 when Bischoff was talking with Sid Vicious and having Sid relinquish the title and say, hey Sid, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna fight me with scissors or whatever? And it was just a bad segment there. But again, he was a guy that like, even with an incident like that, still getting opportunities with major promotions. So yeah, when I heard he passed, I was surprised. Didn't realize that he had been battling cancer for a while. So it definitely came as a surprise, and I just went back and watched that Lee Scott match, which is just again, I highly recommend people go back and watch that Lee Scott match because it is a tremendous squash match.
Love a good squash match.
Yes, sir.
How can you not love a good squash match?
When done right, when done right, squash matches can be a lot of fun. It could be a nice little change up in pro wrestling. So
absolutely. Okay, so let's go in another direction. And look, we got All Out coming up this coming weekend, and we feel like All In was just, yesterday, but it was a week ago, and it only a 2-week gap. First of all, I just want to say I don't like the 2-week gap. I know last year was only a week, wasn't it?
Yep.
And this year they've gone to 2. I'm not sure why they're still doing this. But I don't like trying to rush in different things. And specifically, you're going to have to help me understand why all of a sudden Jack Perry, as the TNT champion, is going to face Bryan Danielson coming up for the title. I don't know how they're going to handle this because they've really set Jack Perry up on, to kind of shoot him to the moon. And I feel like anything that they do here isn't going to help. So you're going to have to explain this one to me a little bit.
Well, I could tell you from a non-storyline explanation standpoint, this title match is taking place in Chicago. And we know with Jack Perry how they've kind of incorporated the CM Punk stuff into his character. So I think they're looking for that big heel reaction for him where he gets booed in Chicago because I believe it was earlier this year when Jack Perry was working for New Japan.
Yeah.
And he wrestled in Chicago and he got massive boos in front of that Chicago crowd. And I think Tony Khan saw that and said, oh, we got to put this on our pay-per-view because that will be a spectacle for us. And that would be a sight to behold. So I think that's why Jack Perry is in this spot from a non-storyline standpoint. From a storyline standpoint, I mean, you kind of touched on he's been winning his matches. He had that big victory over Darby Allin. So I was surprised that it was Jack Perry too. That would be the challenger for Bryan Danielson in his first title defense of the World Championship. I see this more as just kind of get that visual of Perry getting booed and he could take a loss to Danielson.
Why would you want to bring up a wrestler again that does not work for your company in your main event?
I don't think they look at it like that. I think they just look at it as the reaction to I think they look at it as like, we're not mentioning CM Punk by name, but we're talking about CM Punk, and we're going to play into that in our main event. I don't necessarily disagree with you, by the way. I'm just saying I think that's what their thought process is. I wouldn't be putting Jack Perry in this spot. But you know what this could also be an indication of is they could also be looking at this and saying, you know what? I think we know what we got here with Jack Perry. Let's kind of get a title match out of this and put it on pay-per-view and see what we could do with him. Because we've been pushing him pretty hard over the last couple of months. Let's see what he could do here and put him on this pay-per-view. And I know it's on short notice, but that will be a test of Jack Perry's star ability, on a 2-week build. So I think that's how they're looking at it when it comes to putting this match together. I don't even think they're thinking in terms of like CM Punk is involved in this or anything like that. I think they know the connection and they want to take advantage of that. And they want to get that visual on pay-per-view of people booing in Chicago, booing Jack Perry and kind of lead it into that.
So one of the other interesting things that happened on Dynamite, of course, was Jon Moxley coming out and telling Tony Schiavone that this isn't his company anymore. And really, it was a more broad statement. And then you saw Marina,
Shafir.
What's the last name?
Shafir, yeah.
Which is Roderick Strong's wife. But you saw her kind of be on the team. So it looks like Jon Moxley is going to go in a separate direction from the Blackpool Combat Club and align himself with I don't know what to call it other than real wrestlers, real fighters.
Shoot style wrestlers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is going to try and take the company over a little bit with his own group that would be separate from the Blackpool Combat Club. First of all, do you like the idea?
I like the idea. I think Moxley works well for that sort of stable that they're looking at. And obviously you bring in Marina Shafir, who has that UFC background, that mixed martial arts background. And we know with Moxley that he really likes that style. He's been working a lot of those blood sport shows for Josh Barnett, the former UFC champion there, that's been running some shows for GCW. So it's an interesting path for him to kind of, it seems like he's splitting off from the Blackpool Combat Club, or at least keeping them at a distance to focus on this new group. I did have a concerning thought run through my mind as this stable was looks to be continuing to be put together, and Moxley making the statement about this isn't your company anymore. I could think of another performer that has tried to get his hands into the MMA business in the past, and is known for his lethal combination of punches, and once even held an underground fighting club, Lee, and also has a connection to one of the biggest wrestling families ever in the history of the business. And
who's that, Zach? Who's that?
That name is one Henzo Gracie trained Shane McMahon. That was the name that came across my mind when I was seeing this. It's like, oh, is this how they're going to introduce Shane McMahon into AEW and be part of this stable with John Moxley and Marina Shafir and whoever else is going to be part of this stable that looks to be continuing to grow? I'm not saying it's certain, but the thought crept through my mind. I am hoping to God I'm wrong. But you know, I'm just saying it's the thought is there when it comes to this stable. I don't want Shane McMahon at all involved in AEW, but
it certainly fits in with, it's not your company anymore. It fits in with a takeover. And who better to be part of a takeover, even if it's not like NWO style, than Shane McMahon, who certainly is associated with the WWE.
Mm-hmm.
This is now concerning to me that you've brought this up, and it makes somewhat sense. It's concerning to me, Zach.
I know. I have that sort of ability to have people concerned.
I'm not a big fan that you've done this, because now I'm not going to be able to get it out of my head. So do you have other people that you think could be involved other than Shano Dancing Mac?
Get those punches in there. I want to see him like throwing those punches in the corner on Jack Perry or something. I mean, they could bring in Barnett. They brought him in before to bring some more legitimacy, I guess, quote unquote.
Yep.
And he could work that style. I'm trying to think of all the other wrestlers in the company. That's kind of a.
What about Roderick Strong?
That could be fun. I could see that. It makes sense, obviously, if they wanted to put that group together. Kyle O'Reilly is another one. That fits perfectly. I don't know if they want to put him in as a heel, because it seems like that they're more heel leaning on this one. But Kyle O'Reilly would fit that group.
What's he doing as a babyface other than losing every week?
Yeah, not much. So it would be
and rubbing Mark Briscoe's shoulders as he incoherently says something else to the camera.
Well, you know, I do enjoy the Mark Briscoe promos. It brings some energy into the show, so I'm not gonna complain about the Briscoe promos. But I get what you're saying. It's with is just he seems to be the guy that's, you know, making the funny faces like, oh, can you believe he said that in the promos?
Yeah, but I think this is an interesting concept, that if people don't, like, if they're not going to do Undisputed Era getting back together, which I think a lot of old wrestling fans hope. I still hope that I see Adam Cole and Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly back together in a group. Like, I still hold out hope for that to happen. But if they've decided that that's not the way to go, it would make a lot of sense to me that both Strong and O'Reilly would be part of a group with Moxley and Marina Shafir and maybe Josh Barnett. It would make sense to me that would be because they're all considered fighters.
Yep.
Right. And like, would you buy Kyle O'Reilly and Roderick Strong as like fighters?
Yep.
I
Sure.
would.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah, and that's getting back to a little bit of what Bash in Berlin was not. This is something with Moxley coming in and saying that this is not your company anymore, and having Marina Shafir, where I don't know exactly where they're going to go next. It doesn't mean they're going to pick the right path, but I don't know, and I'm kind of interested in it. I like John Moxley. I don't think he's going to do something stupid for his career. So, and maybe that group ends up feuding, of course, with Blackpool Combat Club that feel like they are the fighters, and right?
Yep. Can I throw out another name here that I was kind of looking through the roster, and I don't think it will happen, but I'm interested to hear your reaction.
Don't say Brian Cage.
Oh, not Brian Cage. No, he would not work in a shoot fighting group. I don't imagine.
Or on a wrestling show. Yeah.
They've tried to push him in the past, and it's just one thing to another, just hasn't really been able to connect, but they've tried to before, and he's been, kind of laying low on TV, and I don't think you'll expect this name, but Anthony Ogogo, maybe? Because he's obviously got the Olympic background as a boxer, and they've tried to push him before. And I at the time when they were pushing Ogogo, I'm like, this is a guy that's got a look. I like him. I like how his presence, and if he's got it in ring, like if he could put it together in ring, there might be something here. But at the time he had that match with Cody, it just didn't land. Now it's been a couple of years, and he's been, working undercard. He's part of that Shane Taylor Promotions stable. Not necessarily been as featured, but this could be a way for him to kind of transition back, and they could try and push him again and see what they got. And show that, they're doing it with Marina Shafir. She had a push a couple of years ago that seemed to have disappeared. Now is getting another push again here in the stable. I like
that name a lot. I really do. I thought you were going to turn to some of the Japanese wrestlers and maybe, like, I don't know if it's Ishii or
I can think of one easy in that sense. Minoru Suzuki.
Yeah, well, that's the other guy, of course, I was trying not to say, but was going to have to at some point. To be part of the group. And so,
Katsuyori Shibata, maybe?
Yeah.
I would like that.
I think Shibata's the most entertaining guy for me out of those three. But there are some interesting things. And I think, again, gets back to the point of, I like John Moxley, and I'm interested to see where they can go to do this. Now, Pac comes out and does an unbelievable reverse Frankensteiner, or whatever you call it, on Will Ospreay on the ramp, and trying to get ready for his match at All Out, which I can't wait for. I think that's going to be a doozy. I just feel like this match deserves a little bit more of a build-up than 10 days, but I hope they're not done with it.
Yeah, they have it in sight. Well, they teased the Will Ospreay Ricochet match. They had that stare down before Pac hit that Poison Rana. And I thought Ricochet for his debut, by the way, on Dynamite I was hoping for a little bit more from him. I think he's still kind of trying to get his feet wet in a new environment for AEW. He looks good. He's got the look.
Can we talk about him for a second? Because I've even had a couple other people say that, look, he's all right. He does some flashy moves and he's decent, but he's kind of missing the it factor.
Yep.
I kind of feel that way too. And I don't know whether I'm sort of listening to them and watching with a different lens, but I do think that something needs to happen to put him above the mid card, or else he's just forever going to be a mid card guy. Maybe that's what he is a mid card guy.
Yep. for a time when he was coming up on the independent scene, he was one of those guys where his in-ring work was just so stellar you couldn't ignore him, and you had to push him pretty high. And I still feel that Ricochet is there. He's 34, 35. Like, to me, Ricochet was what Will Ospreay is now, but Ospreay has eclipsed that peak, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like, people think, like, Ricochet was that guy during his time in the Indies where he was that peak in-ring performer that could do the flashy moves, but he was just not the greatest promo guy. Ospreay was kind of in that same realm, and they had a bunch of matches together on the Indies, but Ospreay has since been able to develop his promos and has become a guy where you're like, yep, that's a guy in the main event scene that you could push, that you can A, trust to have a great match at the least, and B, be a guy who could develop and grow a program through his promo ability, which was something that was the big concern of his, that he's grown. And I agree with you with Ricochet. He hasn't been able to find that footing when it comes to his promos to take him to that next step. So I think in his case, he's got to tap back into that in-ring guy that I know is there and be super exceptional at that. That way he can kind of overcome some of the weaknesses that he has on that front. And I think that's going to take some time with him having a couple more matches on AEW. So
does he need to be in a group or have a manager?
I don't know if need. I won't say need now. I want to see how he does for the first little bit on his own in this environment, and then kind of go from there. I think it would benefit him being in a group, but I think the plans for him is they want him to be a central focus, one of the central focuses on the show, and I think they want to do that Ospreay Ricochet match at some point. So I think you got to give him some time to kind of get his feet wet and because he's been, I didn't realize this, how long he's been in WWE, but he was in that company for like 7 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's going to take some time for him to kind of get used to a new environment where it's not as rigid when it comes to how they put matches together. And he could be a little bit more free on what he does in the ring. So I'd say give it a little bit of time, but you definitely want to keep that in the back of your mind of maybe this is a guy we need to, strap him with a manager or have him in a group. But I think they want him to be a central focus, so they're not doing that right now.
Yeah, I just worry about him speaking. That's all. I don't get the it factor when Ricochet speaks that I need to sit up and listen to what he has to say. And if that needs to come from somebody else to elevate him, and I think that's kind of what they thought a little bit with Will Ospreay, with sticking Don Callis with him, until they realized, no, he's going to be just fine on his own. But I worry about him coming out and speaking too much to basically not get him into that top tier. And they signed a multi-year deal with AEW, so we'll see where that goes. Maybe a little bit of a shorter edition, Zach, but I do think having an all-out show coming up in maybe a few days, plus we'll be able to talk a little. I need to get my football out. Like whether you're doing a podcast or not, I need some of your takes.
Okay.
I need some of your sleepers for fantasy drafts.
Yeah.
I need all that. So we're gonna have to talk again soon here before All Out comes out this Sunday. So look, the WWE is coming back from Germany, and they got Raw and SmackDown coming up. We'll have Dynamite, the go home show for All Out, and then All Out coming up on Sunday from Chicago. So we're gonna have to reconvene before the weekend. And most importantly, Tom Brady gets to call Dak Prescott the greatest quarterback ever when he's on commentary for Dak Prescott in Cleveland coming up this week.
You looking forward to that?
Well, not that Cleveland's 2.5-point favorites.
No.
No. I'm a little touch worried about that. However, like losing in Cleveland on week 1 doesn't doesn't do a lot for me. But
No.
we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the week. Zach, always good to catch up, my friend.
Yes, same here. It's always fun to talk wrestling, and we'll be back later on with another episode, as it's just been a busy stretch here when it comes to professional wrestling, hasn't it? It's just been pay-per-view after PLE after pay-per-view, but we are chugging along here.
Yeah, and it's a good time of year for people. The NFL is back. The CFL gets into some big games. The NHL training camps are around the corner. Baseball gets into some, major time in the fall as well. And there's just a lot to look forward to. And
college football is back.
What's that?
College football is back as well.
College football is back. Yes. Nothing like watching Georgia blow out Clemson, wondering exactly who's going to press Georgia at all this year if Clemson can't do it. But we'll see. There's a ton of stuff. And with wrestling, just all like we got Bad Blood and you got Wrestle Dream and you got Survivor Series and you got tons of stuff coming up for both companies. So it's a good time to be a wrestling fan for sure. So we'll reconvene to make sure that we preview All Out. I know that Superfan, the guy who didn't win the pool, lost to Le Champion Chris Thompson in his own place, as the WWE guy came in and beat the AEW guy in his own home track. We might have to, pump his tires a little bit and get him on the preview show a little bit later on this week, because I know he's looking forward to All Out. Look forward to...
That reminds me. I do have word from our champion, Trevor Struthers. He tuned into the last episode there.
Predictriver, or...
That's right. The Predictriver. Okay. He says he's sitting by the phone. He's waiting for the call, brother. Waiting for the opportunity to defend his title. Saying we should call him. He's the real world champion after all. Talking about Le Champion and all that.
So, okay. So here's what happens though, Predictriver. You don't win a title. If the people who win the title... When Cody won the title, do you think he wasn't first out the next night?
That's true.
When people win world championships, are they like first out on the next show? Are they in your face? Are they there with their presence known, or do they ask people to call them? Okay, so all right. Well, then we'll get the Predictriver on then, and we'll, hey, you know what? Maybe we'll do a quick build into Le Champion getting up into a number one contender spot.
Ooh,
and put his AEW skills to the test here, as the Predictriver apparently is just accepting challenges, sitting back.
He said he's on a Roman Reigns schedule right now. He's just waiting for the call from the office to get booked.
I get that. I get it. If Roman Reigns is a good model, so okay, yeah, you want to do that way, but suddenly we're going to throw somebody at you.
Yeah. He also wanted to make it clear he's the only world champion that matters when it comes to this. You could talk about Le Champion, you could talk about all these other things, but he's the one that actually won the title, so he's the only world champion that matters.
I agree, and we do say former Le Champion, or at least try to. And I get that he matters. So, okay, well, it's put up or shut up time coming up. Right. Apparently, we're going to have to hear from Predictriver coming up in the next episode. What a tease that is for everyone.
There you go.
So we'll have to hear from him as well coming up, going into these shows. So that's a lot to get to, apparently.
When you brought up, I was like, oh, yes, see, I forgot he had replied to me about that, so I wanted to make sure get that in. But he's waiting. He wants to live up to his gimmick of the Predictriver and wants to get some predictions in.
Hey, Trevor, the host of the show, Zach, forgot about you until the very end. Just saying. That's how memorable you are. So might want to work on that a little bit. However, we always poke fun, a little good fun. Always good to have Trevor with us. And look, we'll present some challengers to you. Okay, sounds good. Trevor, you want to defend your strap? I'm going to come at you. Okay, a little Vince Russo winning the world heavyweight title.
That's truly a swerve.
Well, Vince McMahon winning the WWE title. Nothing like putting the strap on yourself.
That's right. There's a lot of independent promotions that do that. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I know. And then there's Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
JEFF, JARRETT, baby.
This is a drive-by on Jeff Jarrett. I apologize. However, we will reconvene coming up later on this week, and we'll have those gentlemen on the show and more. For Zach McGibbon and Lee Versage, thanks again for listening. This is Wrestling.